Hey there guys, and welcome to this episode of Gearus TV. On today's show, we're going to be taking a look at the Type A6 racing flat from Saucony. The Type A series from Saucony has been a shoe that's garnered a lot of loyalty among a lot of really well-known and well-respected runners. One such includes our buddy over at Run Blogger, Pete Larson, who said about the Saucony Type A5, Pete said, "I loved it. I might go so far as to saying it's the best shoe I've ever run in. I'm not exaggerating." So, this is really a shoe that we were looking forward to trying out, the Type A6, to see what we thought of it. And since this is our first try in the Type A series from Saucony, we really wanted to be sure that we approached it very objectively and not letting other people's really glowing opinions of this shoe spoil it, because, you know, we don't want to taint that. But what came out of the other side is really actually a very solid shoe. So let's get into talking about it and I'll let you know what we think. As always, the first part of the shoe we're going to talk about is the outsole. Now, according to what we've read and everything, the outsole in the Type A6 is a complete reboot from the Type A5. Now, the materials of the outsole start down here in the heel and then again up here in this toe area. This is Saucony's XT900 carbon rubber compound. It's going to be very durable. These are the really high traffic areas that are really going to get the brunt of any friction, both on a heel strike or on a toe off, if that's the way that you run. Here in the middle, this is injection blown rubber, IBR Plus, which is another of Saucony's proprietary materials. This particular material, what makes it great is it's really resilient, it's going to give a lot of spring, and it's actually going to add a little bit of cushioning. If you just feel it by pressing on it versus the XT900 here, you can feel that it's a little softer, a little springier, and it's going to provide great traction and, again, that little tiny extra bit of cushioning and or springiness in the midfoot, the midsole right here, the mid-instep, this area. You know what I'm saying. The outsole itself, as it is in a number of Saucony shoes, is a full contact outsole. You can see here there's no cutaway in the instep right here in the arch. It's going to all be on the ground at the same time, which is going to contribute to ground feel. We're going to talk about that in the ride section. But again, we've seen this in something like the Verada. We've seen this in the Kinvara, the entire series 1 through 4, and we've got 5 in-house now. So this is a great feature. Now, what's interesting about this is, having looked at pictures of the Type A5, is that it seems that they've actually added rubber to the bottom of this, yet the shoe is lighter, which is a really pretty impressive feat. The traction and the agility of the outsole of the Type A6 is really impressive, and I think that a large portion of that, for me anyway, in the way that I run, if I'm using this in a way that I need that agility, then this really quite generous flex groove right there, right under the toes, is really awesome, and it goes all the way through the shoe, and it really allows the shoe to bend with the foot when you kind of ask for it. And the traction, because of that, is also good, because again, it allows the foot to kind of grip the pavement a little bit, pavement, track, whatever you're running on. Durability on the Type A6 is fantastic. Now, I've got about 35 miles on this right now. It's almost all road, or at least pavement. Some of it's track, some of it's road. One of it was like a kind of a crushed, not gravel, like a really fine gravel track. Up here in the forefoot, the XT900 rubber, and then again here in the heel, there's barely any wear. Now here through the midfoot on the IBR Plus rubber, there's a little bit more wear, but it's actually just kind of dirty. It's not really wear very much. And where I tend to personally put quite a bit of wear is right here under the first ray, and you can see that right there. I don't know if the camera's going to focus on it, but there's just not much wear. It's very, I mean, that is clearly where I land, but this is not much wear. So the durability on the outsole of this for a racing flat is excellent. Now let's talk a little bit about the midsole of the Saucony Type A6. This is made from a combination of SSL, which is Saucony Super Light, and also EVA Plus, which we've seen in other shoes like the Kinvara, the Verada, and things like that. In this case, it allows for a very lightweight, very resilient shoe. Lightweight being lightweight, resilient meaning a lot of pop. It's going to spring back. It's going to give you that kind of energy that you put into it. It's going to kind of have a little bit of recoil, which is nice. It's also going to make for the ability to have a very low stack height. Now, in the shoe, the stack height in the heel is 16 millimeters with 12 millimeters of stack in the forefoot for a net drop of 4 millimeters. Now, while I will talk about this more in the ride section of this review, I did feel like it was worth mentioning here that the midsole of the shoe, there's just not a lot of bells and whistles going on, and that's a good thing. What the word that kind of comes to mind is quiet. There's just quiet. I mean, when you're running in this shoe, there's nothing going on that is accessory. There's nothing that is going on that you're going to hear pops and creases and all this type of stuff. It just is very quiet and really close to the foot, and that midsole is a really big part of that, I feel. Like its predecessor, the A6 also sports drain holes, which you can see here. Now, to be honest, I am kind of ambivalent toward drain holes. I don't really see the point unless it's a trail-eating monster of a shoe. In a racing flat, I just don't see the point, unless maybe it's to shave a little bit of weight. These drain holes are fewer than they were in previous iterations of the shoe, though they are a little bit larger. Now, if you're running in this shoe over through like a puddle or something, you step in some water, you're probably going to feel that water come up through the bottom of the shoe. The reason for this is because that right there goes directly into the inside of the shoe, and the sock liner of the shoe, as you can see here, has ventilation holes that overlay those specific areas. You can see there the drain holes correspond to the vents on the sock liner. So honestly, drain holes, I don't think they're really necessary, but in the case of this, maybe that's a way that they managed to shave down some weight. Yeah, drain holes, meh. Another quick thing about drain holes is that they're also a spot for things to get stuck. So sure, an errant rock or something can get stuck in there. You're not really going to feel it, but in the case where you are wearing this and you find yourself getting habitually stuck with things in there, or you find water coming through and it's uncomfortable, you can certainly seal these up with something like shoe glue or like, I don't know, Gorilla Glue, or just something that's going to basically fill those holes in so that they become pretty much non-functional. Now let's talk about the upper of the shoe. Now, in my opinion, when it comes to racing flats, uppers, it's very much a case of less is more. There shouldn't be a whole lot going on. This is supposed to be a simple shoe that's going to be light. Now, while the designs on this may look a little bit complex, Saucony has done a really great job of keeping the upper of the Type A6 very, very simple. The material itself is actually a combination of two different meshes. This outer mesh, which you can see here, is a little more closed. It's a little more fine. That's going to keep out more fine debris. And then internally, you can see the larger holes underlying that. That internal, I'm going to try to show you on the inside there, that internal is a bit softer of a mesh. Larger holes is going to make it breathable, and it's also really, really comfortable against a bare foot if that's the way you choose to run in this shoe. Now, the support elements in the upper of the Type A6 are made from Saucony's Flex Film, which I love. We've talked about it in the Kinvaras. It also appears in things like the Verada and shoes like this. In this case, it's very minimal. Now, it's going to be kind of difficult to see because it's all one color, but this black line is part of it, but then there's, you may be able to see, I'll try to handle it so the gloss kind of shows up. You can see kind of the glossy sections that are up here. That's actually the Flex Film, which tends to be underlying those black lines that you can see there. The great part about Flex Film is that it's very, very light, obviously, but it's also very strong, and its ability to be kind of laid on the shoe wherever it needs to be means that it is where it should be and needs to be, and is out of the way where you don't necessarily want it to provide for more ventilation and things like that. Now, when it comes to ventilation, I have run in this shoe one time barefoot. Now, I do tend to run in shoes with socks almost all the time just because I prefer socks. My feet actually feel hotter without socks than they do with socks. I don't know why that is. However, in this shoe, the way that that inner mesh that I mentioned a few minutes ago, the larger hole mesh there, the way that that mesh works, it's got a very kind of microfiber almost backing. So it's so ventilated in here, and then with that type of backing, this felt really great even on my barefoot and kept me really well ventilated. So that's an added bonus of the upper. Also, during that barefoot run, I never found myself getting any hot spots or, quite honestly, any discomfort at all. I still prefer to wear socks just because I don't really trust my feet over the long haul in a race or something like that. But when I was wearing this barefoot, A-okay. The padding around the tongue and the collar is actually really nice. It's not super overpowered, not big, huge, and bulky padding. It's also not very dense, so this means that this stuff is going to pretty much fit you one way the whole time you've got it on, and it's not going to compact over the course of a workout or something like that. Now, the heel counter actually is pretty traditional in shape around this way, but it only comes up to about a third of the way up the heel. It ends right about there. There's a little bit more rigidity across the foxing across the back here, but in general, it doesn't come up very high. Now, the combination of the Flex Film here and the heel cup internally with the sock liner creates a heel cup that's actually really nice and doesn't affect me. I didn't notice, even on things where I was asking the shoe to have a little more agility, I didn't notice any heel slippage or anything like that. And because this is a racing flat built on a more narrow last, it's probably not going to have a hard time with people that have a lower volume foot. There are 3 additional features to the upper that I really like. They're very small things that aren't going to make a bit of difference to a lot of people, but in general, they're really well thought out things that I really appreciate. The first is right here, this little strap. Now, generally speaking, when you see a pull tab, whether it's on a racing flat or trail shoe or what have you, it's going to be a loop that sticks out. In this case, this is elastic. As you can see there, it is tight to the shoe. You just slip your hand in there and it stretches out, and it goes right back to the shoe. Great piece of material to have right there. Keeps it nice and down close to the shoe, and there's not an extra tab floating around up there. So that's really nice. Additionally, on the tongue, the kind of cousin to that is right here, where you can see the nameplate generally appears. It does still say Saucony, but that is another loop to pull on by way of the tongue. It's not elastic like it is back here, but again, it's close down to the tongue. As you can see here, it's kind of like part of the tongue, so it's not another loop hanging off the front there. Now, the third thing is actually a really cool thing that I used to a while ago. I had this pet peeve about having laces flopping around, so I tuck them under laces a lot. I have gotten over that, but I do know that there are a lot of people that still want to have their laces very still and not flopping about for whatever reason, and that's totally fine. I get it. Been there. In this case, what they've done right here, about halfway down the tongue, you can see right here there's a little elastic strap, and this is a perfect place to just tuck those laces right under there, and they'll be laid down on the top of the tongue. These are 3 really, really simple elements that I really, really like a lot. So kudos for thinking outside the box on that one, Saucony. Now let's talk about the fit of the Type A6. For a lot of people, they like their racing flats to fit more snugly. I've known people size down as much as like a size and a half in racing flats, especially for like 5, 10K, things like that. For me, I tend to want the same shoe fit and size across the board. So I went with a size 11, did not size down. I typically wear a size 11, and this fit me lengthwise the same as any other Saucony shoe, the Kinvara, the Verada, whatever. This fit the exact same way. So if you don't size down in your running shoes, go ahead and get the same size. Now, being that it is built on a racing flat, last, it is more narrow, as you can see here. It is not a wide shoe, and racing flats generally, that's kind of the way that they are. Now, in the case of this, as narrow as it tends to look, when I had this on, especially when I had it on that one run barefoot, it doesn't feel like that very much. Now, the fabric doesn't really stretch or give, but it just didn't feel like that. I think probably because the fabric is so lightweight, the mesh up here, that it's going to really shape to the foot, and it's not going to put this this kind of pressure coming in this way on it. So again, if you've got a wide foot or something like that, you may have a hard time, but that would be the case in pretty much any racing flat for you. In this case, it fits just like a racing flat and a little more snug, a little more narrow, but again, the sizing is right where it typically is. As I mentioned earlier, the heel cup and the heel kind of area is really well shaped by the elements that it makes up, that are making it up, rather. The heel counter itself is not huge. This does not affect it, as I mentioned earlier. It still has a really nicely shaped heel cup. Through the midfoot, it's exactly what you make of it. There's plenty of lacing to let in or out the laces as you would want to. There's no big, huge built-up arch support or anything like that. And the fit is just really nice through here. If you're going to have a problem with this shoe in terms of width, if you've got a wider foot, it's more than likely going to be from here forward. So again, that's probably the way it is for you in most racing flats if you have a wider foot, and this would be very traditional in terms of a racing flat width. And now let's talk about the ride of the Type A6. So for me, I've been noticing this trend moving forward that kind of seems to point toward racing flats being a little more cushioned. In some cases, that's by way of a little more stack underfoot. In other cases, it's a byproduct of shaping of the outsole and the midsole. In the case of the Type A6, neither of those things are really the case. It's not overly stacked. It's not like a huge stack height. Again, only 16 millimeters on 12 millimeters in the forefoot. And it's not super shaped like something like the Pearl Izumi EM Rodin Zero, but it still does a nice job. It is a firm ride. You're going to get that racing flat ride, but I found it to not be harsh on my legs. That said, I did also find myself adapting my technique a little bit. Now, I spoke recently about slowing back my cadence, knocking it down a few notches. Generally, I tend to run between 185 to 190, 95 steps per minute. I have a pretty short stride, but I decided recently when running in a different flat to open that stride up a little bit and slow the cadence. Now I opened up out the back, not the front, so I was overstriding or anything like that. In this, I tried to do the same thing, and it really resulted in a very flowy ride. I felt myself getting up on top of the gate and really flowing through, and that made for a very smooth ride. Yes, that was partially attributed to my gait and adapting the way that I felt was appropriate, but also the shoe not being something that's got a ton of bells and whistles. There's nothing going on. It's very simple. While this is a 2 medium EVA compound down here on the bottom, the SSL as well as the EVA Plus, it's still not, there are no moving parts. There's nothing here to kind of get in your way. And that really makes for a very smooth ride, in my opinion. Again, still a firm ride, definitely a racing flat ride, but still very smooth. When it comes to the ride, the problem that I have with the shoe, and this is, I hesitate to call it a problem because it's not really a problem, right? The problem that I have with the shoe is that it doesn't want to go slow. I went to the track about a week ago and I meant to do a 400 warm up, I meant to do a mile warm up. And so the first 400 was nice and kind of cruisy, and the second 400 was kind of a little less cruisy, and then by the third 400 I realized that I was going way faster than I intended to. I was still in a pretty good place heart rate wise and everything because of where I had taken my gait and knocked that cadence back a little bit, but this shoe does not want to go slow. It does not lend itself to that. So if you're looking for a daily trainer, this is probably not necessarily going to be it. This is definitely a tempo shoe. If you're going to do track workouts, this is great for that. Races, great for that. Up to, depending on how you feel about it. I'd be comfortable in this up to a half marathon right now, but in certain cases, I might even test it up to a marathon. I'm not really sure, but it doesn't want to go slow. So if you intend to cruise through something or you have a kind of recovery run, you may be able to pull it off better than I could, but I personally couldn't really go as slowly as some of those types of runs might dictate in this shoe. Let's talk about price for a second. At $100, this puts it right in line with its peers. A racing flat of good quality by a reputable brand such as Saucony. It's a really good price at $100. It's also light. At 5.2 ounces in a men's size 9, it's just a really great weight. And that also, I feel like, contributes rather to the fit, the feel, and the ride in that very quiet feel that I've been talking about a little bit. This shoe is light. It's coming from a really good pedigree that a lot of people really love. And while I haven't tried the Type A5 and before, this is certainly a great shoe, and I can see where people really appreciate and like this series. So if you have been a fan of the Type A series from Saucony in the past, get yourself a pair and check it out. Added bonus to these shoes real quick is that on the soles, on the outsole, it says on the right foot, life's hard. On the left foot, it says run harder. So that's pretty cool. Little inspiration under your foot, which will probably wear off when you run on that. But pretty cool nevertheless. Before we get into the ratings, we want to know if you've tried any of the Type A series shoes. Have you tried the Type A6 or did you like one of the other Type A's? Please let us know in the comments section below. And now let's get into the ratings. First up is construction. Really well built shoe, and what else would you expect from Saucony? And again, very quiet. There's nothing creaking or moving around. Really nice construction. Durability, we're also going to give it 4.5 stars. For a racing flat, this thing holds up remarkably well in my opinion. Again, with 35 miles, there's no wear essentially on the toe cap or on the lateral heel here. And even on the kind of the middle portion, the midfoot, the blown rubber here, very little wear to speak of. Comfort, we're going to give it 4 stars. Look, it's a racing flat. Yes, it's comfortable for a racing flat, but it's still a racing flat. Not a ton in the way of cushioning, and not really just your kick it around shoe. But again, for a racing flat, quite comfortable. Fit, 4 stars. I feel like it fits really well up to about here. I think that you could still maintain that racing fit, that racing flat pedigree, and then round out the toe box just a hair more would kind of take this next level. Weight, 4.5 stars. 5.2 ounces, men's size 9. Performance, also 4.5 stars. Really high performing shoe that's very agile and has a lot of power transfer to the ground since it's such a firm ride that really responds to the foot very well. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Gearist TV. Please don't forget to follow us on all our social media channels. You can find us Instagram @TheGearist, Twitter @TheGearist, Facebook.com/Gearist, YouTube, which you're watching right now, .com/ The Gearist. Also find us on Google just by searching for Gearist. If you've got any questions or comments about any of our reviews that are here or over at our site gearist.com, please leave them in the comments section below or just comment over at Gearist. We've got promotions coming up at the end of this week, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and tell your friends. The more subscribers that we have, the more promotions and giveaways we can do, so definitely stay tuned. Thank you guys again so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.